So today we want to look at a story in the Old Testament. So I'm going to ask you to open to Ruth. Ruth. It's a well-known story. Probably many people don't know the details of the story. We're going to be looking at the first part in Ruth chapter 1, verses 1 through 18. Instead of having someone to come up and read the whole thing, because it's 18 verses, we're going to read a little bit and then talk a little bit, and read a little bit and talk a little bit. And regardless of whether you are a mother now or whatever your situation is, we all have a mother, and we can all be an influence, and we can be a help to somebody else. And as I said, my mind goes today to all the mothers in Ukraine who are struggling in all different sorts of ways. We just want to be able to encourage the moms, help you to realize the important job that you have, whether you are a mother or a grandmother, or Janice's case, great-grandmother. Are there any great? Oh, sorry. Okay. We won't go there, okay? And obviously Audrey as grandmother as well. Okay, Chris, you're not a grandmother, are you?
No.
Okay, right.
Great-granddad.
Right, okay. Okay, we're going to read just the first 5 verses in Ruth chapter 1, verses 1 through 5. Let's take a look at this incredible story. The Bible says this: Now it came to pass in the days when the judges ruled, that there was a famine in the land, and a certain man of Bethlehem, Judah, went to dwell in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his 2 sons. The name of the man was Elimelech, and the name of his wife was Naomi. And the names of his 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion, Ephrathites of Bethlehem, Judah, and they went to the country of Moab and settled there. Then Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died, and she was left with her 2 sons. Now they took wives of the women of Moab. The name of the one was Orpah, and the name of the other was Ruth. And they dwelt there about 10 years. Then both Mahlon and Chilion also died. So the women survived her 2 sons and her husband. I realize that seems very confusing. Okay, a lot of names, a lot of things happening. Let's see if we can try and put it together. Get through our songs here. Today, we want to think about something I'm going to call the tribute. The tribute. There is a family tragedy that had happened within this story in verses 1 through 5. A family tragedy. And as it is with families, there's often difficult things that happen. Let me just give you a little bit of the background. Do you remember that there was a time when... You remember all the thing about Moses and Joshua and all that sort of stuff. There was a period called the Judges. The Judges. Okay? Judges were people that God brought up to lead the Israelites, to lead the Jewish people. But what often happened that as people are, the Jews would be obedient for a period of time, and then they would get their eyes off of God, and because they're all the idols all around and the people all around, they get their eyes off of God, and they get into this period of sinning and rebelling against God. God would say, okay, if this is what you're going to do, I'm going to send a judgment to you. And this judgment could be anything from an army to come and take them, or a famine, or any sorts of things. And as happens, when bad things happen, what do people do? They cry out to God. God listened, and God said, okay, I'm going to send someone to deliver you like Moses. And then God would send someone to help them. They would help them. They'd say, oh God, thank you so much. And everything would be good for a period of time. And after a period of time, they get their eyes off of God, and guess what? It starts to happen all over again. They get into this cycle of sin. God would send a judgment. They'd cry out to God. God would send a deliverer. He would come and deliver them. And they'd say, oh God, thank you so much. And this happened again and again and again. It says that this story was happening during the time of the judges. And quite probably this time was during one of those cycles when there was a famine in the land of these times. So there's a bit of background. So this family went to live in this area called Moab. This area called Moab. Now, God had encouraged the Jews not to intermarry. He said, don't involve yourself with them, but it must have been really serious because there was no food, and when you're hungry, you do things that you normally wouldn't do. So, Naomi and her husband, and how many boys? How many boys did she have?
Two.
She had 2 boys. Were they married?
No.
No, not until they went to Moab. That's important. So they packed their bags, moved to Moab, which is not a great thing to do, but there was no food. Judgment was happening. They moved to Moab, and where they settled. But then what happened was Naomi's husband died. Elimelech died. Now, that's a tragedy. That's a sad thing. We don't know why he died. We don't know what happened. We don't know the details. But we see that Naomi was left with her 2 sons. And as they were there for a period of time, there were not any Israelite women for them to marry. So who did they marry? They married people from Moab. And so that wasn't God's ultimate plan and desire for them. But because they were there, and God's grace is so wonderful, so amazing, that that there was no great judgment, no problems, and no issues. But the Bible then says that after 10 years, I'm not sure if you caught that, but after 10 years, tragedy happened again. And both sons died. Both sons died. Now, that is a problem. Why is it a problem? Well, the problem is now you have Naomi. Does she have a husband? No. The 2 boys, where it happened? They died. They married women from Moab. So who's left in the story? Naomi and the 2 women. One was named Ruth. So, Eric, why is that a problem? Well, just like when my mother had us as children, there was no government benefits. No one to come along and pay money into your bank account. And certainly in that culture, if you were not married, you were way down there. Okay? If your husband died, it was often seen that God's judgment was on you. That's often the view. That if your husband died, that God was judging you. Is that true?
No.
No. No. But sometimes people think wrongly. Sometimes. Anyway, the culture looked at Naomi with, what have you done wrong? They looked at these 2 women as, what have you done wrong? And quite probably they were in a very, very bad situation there in the community. And they said, we cannot stay here any longer. And they heard that there was food back in Bethlehem. So we then come to a dilemma, a problem. Dilemma within the family. Starting in verse 6, let me read this to you. says, Then she arose with her daughters-in-law, that she might return from the country of Moab, for she heard in the country of Moab that the Lord had visited his people and giving them bread. So Naomi heard that, God's hand of judgment is lifted, it's gone, and there's bread back home. Verse 7. Therefore she went from the place where she was, and her 2 daughters-in-law with her, and they went on the way to return to the land of Judah. They packed their bags and started back to where they were from. Now, Naomi was from that area. That was her home. What about the 2 young women? Was that their home? No. But where they were from, they had married these Jewish men, but now they were way down on the social because their husband had died, they had no one to support them, and they were in a bad situation. But at least it was their home. It was their home. And that's important to remember. So here it is. She decided to return to Bethlehem. Verse 8. And Naomi said to her 2 daughters-in-law, Go, return each to her mother's house. The Lord deal kindly with you as you have dealt with the dead and with me. Naomi said to the 2 women, they said, Listen, you've been very nice to me. You've been very kind to me. But please, go to your mother's house. Go to the house that you grew up in, and they will for sure take care of you. But me, I'm going to go back to where I'm from. Now, can you imagine how Naomi must have been absolutely heartbroken. She leaves in Moab, what? 3 graves. Her husband and her 2 sons. Now for any mother, how difficult that must be. For any mother. Not just to have her children die, her husband die, but to go from the place where she had to bury them to go back just to survive. And this is her situation. It must have been a very, very difficult Mother's Day for Naomi. It must have been. So, Naomi says to her daughters-in-law, go back to your family. Go back because they will be able to take care of you. However, in verse 10, let's read this. But the 2 women said to her, surely we will return with you to your people. So the 2 daughters-in-law said, Naomi, we want to go with you. We want to go back with you to your people. Well, we don't know exactly why they said that. Probably is because, as we said, their husbands had died. They would have looked like God was judging them from the community. No job, no food. What were they going to do? They said, Naomi, we want to go back with you. But then in verse 11, notice what it says. But Naomi said, turn back, my daughters. Why do you want to go with me? Why will you go with me? Are there still sons in my womb that they may be your husband? Let's try and understand this just a little bit. She said to the girls, go back to your mother's house. It's a place that you know. It's a place that you're familiar with. And she said, God is going to bless you. God is going to be with you. Being a single woman was very hard, but at least it could be doable. It could work for you here. But then she started into this other little speech. And it's weird, it's hard for us to understand. We have to sort of take our minds, go back into the culture and see what she's talking about. She begins in that verse, and she said in verse 11, are there still sons in my womb? So what is she talking about? Okay, let's try and understand this. There's this idea of a may have blesses them. Okay, no, and she talks about this idea of a kinsman redeemer. Kinsman redeemer. Let me try and explain what that means. Let's read the next couple verses to try and understand this just a little bit. She says, are there still sons within my womb, that they may become your husbands? That's kind of strange. She says, turn back, for I am too old now, Naomi says, I am too old to have a husband, and if I say I have hope, if I should have a husband tonight and should have sons, are you going to wait for them until they're grown? Here's the idea. The way it worked in that culture, that if a woman married a husband, okay, and they did not have any children, that the land that was theirs by inheritance, okay, if the husband did not have any children, but the husband then died, it was the responsibility of a brother to marry her. Why? For us that seems strange. Okay, it seems weird. But it was all about land inheritance. So the idea was that the land would stay within the family. Because if the husband died and she was left without children, whose land would this go to then? It created a lot of problems. So there was this whole idea of this kinsman redeemer that this brother would marry into. He would marry her, they would have a child, and it would stay within the family. And that's the way it worked. Now, she goes on in verse 13 and says, would you wait for them till they were grown? She said, listen, I cannot have any more children. I'm old. I can't get married again. And even if I could, would you wait from the time of Aurora till they're 18 years old? Would you wait 18 or 20 years, really, to be able to marry them? No. That seems strange. That seems weird. No, my daughters, for it grieves me very much for your sake that the hand of the Lord has gone out against me. Possibly, Naomi was thinking, God is judging me because I moved to Moab and our boys married women from Moab. So Naomi is struggling with what? Losing her husband, losing son number one, losing son number two, and now she's letting this play in her mind, God's judging me. She's having a rough time. She's having a rough time. Now, moving on. Verse 14. Then they lifted up their voices, they shouted and wept again. And Orpah, one of the daughters-in-law, kissed her mother-in-law, said goodbye, but Ruth clung to her. Clung. Hold. Wouldn't let her go. Ruth held on to her mother-in-law. But verse 15. And she said, look, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. Return after your sister-in-law. Naomi said, listen, Ruth, that's very nice. Thank you. But Orpah has gone back to her family. Please go back with her. Look at me. I'm old. I can't do anything. I'm not any help to you. Please let me go home back, and then you go find another husband here in Moab. Go back to your family, and everything will be okay. And Ruth said, no, I'm not going. And I wonder, why did Ruth cling to Naomi? Why? I think that's a good question. So I want to come to this thing today of what I'm going to call a family tribute. A family tribute. Now, anytime you hear about mothers-in-law, do mothers-in-law have a good reputation, by the way? No. Okay, mothers-in-law get a whole lot of, what can I say? Stick. They get a lot of ribbing. They get a lot of negativity. People say all this about mothers-in-law. However, notice what Ruth does about her mother-in-law. Notice what Ruth says. Notice what she says. She says, entreat me, beg me not to leave you, in verse 16, or turn back after following you. For wherever you go, I will go. And wherever you lodge, wherever you sleep, I will lodge, I will sleep. Your people shall be my people, and your God shall be my God. Wow, that's big. Before, Ruth was a worshiper of whatever the false idols, but look what the influence from Naomi. Now, Ruth wasn't Naomi's mom. Ruth wasn't, yeah. Naomi wasn't Ruth's mom, but she had such an influence on her daughter-in-law that when Ruth's husband died, she said, I want to stay with you. I want to stay with you, Ruth. She said to Ruth, I offer you myself as a servant. Wow. I think what Ruth is saying, she's saying, over the years, I've watched you. Naomi, I've watched what you do. I've watched how you treated your husband. I've watched how you treated your son. And I've learned so much from you. I want to stay with you because you are a woman of character. You are a woman of strength. Why, I've not seen such a thing in all of Moab, but when you came, wow, I want to be just like you. I want to be able to take care of you when you get old out of thankfulness for everything that you have given to me. Whew. That's pretty good. And Ruth said, I want to stay with you. Now, this is big. This is big because she is saying, I'm willing to surrender any security that I have for you. Okay, now I want you to just try and imagine this. Okay, is Ruth a Jew? Jewish woman? Is Ruth a Jew? No, she's from the land of Moab. They did not like them. They did not like them. They were fighting. They did not get along together. But Ruth says, because I've been watching you, Naomi, I want to go with you to your home, and I want to serve you. So, Ruth was willing to pack her bags, leave everything that she knew, leave any family ties, any family, she was willing to leave that. She's willing to leave any of the other security because I'm sure she thought, she knew in her mind, hey, if I stay in Moab, maybe, I might be able to marry somebody. Because she's still young. Maybe. But would she find someone to marry in Bethlehem? Nope. Why? She's a Moabite woman. She's on the other team. She's the enemy. But because of her love and her dedication to who? Naomi. She said, I'm willing to give up all of that out of my love to you. Wow. Did Naomi have an influence on Ruth? Better believe it. So for every mother here and grandmother, I just wish I could tell you how powerful you are. Okay? There's an old proverb, and it's debated who said this, but the proverb says this, that the hand that rocks the cradle, do you know what the rest says? The hand that rocks the cradle is the hand that rules the world. Okay? So the point is that for all you mothers here, for all you grandmothers, you have an influence. You have a power, a responsibility towards your children and your grandchildren that is unbelievable. Now, I don't want to put a heavy burden on you. That's not the point of this. The point of this is to encourage you, to help you realize that your job is the most important job in the entire world. Okay? You could go to some company and earn 100,000 pounds a year, maybe, but your responsibility in your work with those little ones and those grandbabies is far more powerful than what you could be making at that firm, at that company. Realize the importance of who you are. She then says this. She says, I surrender all the gods that I grew up with, and I give my heart to your God. She says, Naomi, your faith in your God has been an example to me in a land where my people are not friendly to you, but you stayed with your God. You did not give up. I saw something in you that I want for me. And Naomi, I thank you for that. I thank you for that. Now, the rest of the story is incredible. Incredible. It's a beautiful story. We don't have time to go through the whole story, but I'll give you the quick version. Okay? Ruth goes with Naomi back to Bethlehem. And her only purpose of doing that was so that she could serve Naomi. But God had a different plan. There was someone who was a kinsman redeemer that was within Elimelech's family. That things happened so that he then ended up marrying Ruth. So Ruth thought, I would never ever get married again. I would never have children. And I would never be able to take care of myself and all of these kind of things. But God says, no. God is good at taking a difficult situation and making it a miracle. God brought along this chappie called Boaz. Now, if you have your Bible, I want you to turn to Matthew chapter 1. Matthew chapter 1. We're going to be done. And we're going to do something very special now. Okay, Matthew chapter 1. I'm not going to tell you where yet. Let me try and tell you the background of the story. So there was Ruth. She ended up marrying someone called Boaz, who was a kinsman redeemer. And probably Ruth thought how amazing that someone would be willing to marry me. Ruth said to Naomi, your people are my people. Your God is my God. Why? Because Ruth sort of had this message dropped down from heaven? No. Because Naomi was a mother and a mother-in-law to someone her son married, and she was that kind of example. Now, I want you to notice in Matthew chapter 1, verse 5. Matthew chapter 1, verse 5. This is the line leading to Jesus. Matthew chapter 1, verse 5. It says, Salmon begot, or means, was born, Boaz. Boaz was the one that married Ruth. Boaz by Rahab. Boaz begot, or brought forth, or was born, Obed by Ruth. Obed begat Jesse, not this Jesse, different Jesse. Jesse begot David the king. King David. So Ruth was in line. She was the great-grandmother to King David. And from that line came who? Jesus. What a story. So Ruth, thinking that she had absolutely nothing to give because Naomi was willing to be the example to Ruth, God used that to bring this miracle, an amazing thing, that Ruth was the mother, the grandmother of King David, and eventually Jesus himself. Now, if you were to read that account in Matthew chapter 1, I think there are only 3 women that are named. Only 3, maybe 4. Most, it's the men, this person, this grandfather, father, all these kind of things. But Ruth has a special mention. Why? Because it was not the normal situation. God was able to take someone who was way out there and bring them along and move her into a place of special importance. And all that happened, why? Because there was a mother, and a mother-in-law, who invested in her daughter-in-law. So moms, grandma, you never know how God is going to use you in your role. The hand that rocks the cradle is the hand that rules the world.